Alright guys, so Summer 6 is now upon us over here on the NA version of the game, and the first premier 5-star server that we're going to talk about is going to be Saber Okita Alter, or Saber Okita Alter, whatever you want to call her. Just know, this girl can loop. Now, I know that quick looping is not as fun, and it's not the hot new thing like, say, Buster farming is, and it's not quite as good as arts farming, but if you're still stuck with it, or you're just a weirdo and you still like to quick loop, this servant might be for you, because Okita Alter was given pretty much all the tools she needed to just be an extraordinary looper in general. Now, there's not a whole lot of like interesting bells and whistles on this servant. They're just kind of what I would like to describe her as a standard .jpeg good unit. Which does not mean a unit is bad, but it just means they are so basic and so straightforward that they kind of just do everything they set out to do in like the most efficient way possible, right? As we kind of get into some of her skills and whatnot, you'll notice that she doesn't really have any niches or anything that she's accomplishing. She's just really, really good straight up. But rather than tell you, why don't I go ahead and show you? So let's start diving into her kit, starting off with her hits. Now, because she's a looper, I don't know how often you're going to run into using her face cards. Maybe you do want to use her in more difficult content, or you want to bring her to certain CQs that she might excel at. That might be kind of nice, but really the most important thing to note here are the hits on her NP, which are rather high at 8 hits on an AoE NP. That's part of the reason she's able to loop so well, because even though that 0.67% NP gain might not seem super impressive, those massive hits are going to allow her to really take advantage of things like overkill to get a lot of NP back. Now, if you do choose to use her face cards, they're also not that bad. 5 hits on 2 quick cards and 4 on the 1 arts card, especially with a 10% star gen stat. She's not going to be a Jack or like an Okita dropping stars all over the place, but especially after we get the quick chain buff, or quick change will then drop 20 stars instead of 10, she'll be able to provide enough stars for her to do some pretty nice crits. And if you're critting on these cards, you get enough refund back that you should be consistently fighting your NP. So overall, just a very rather solid like set of hits going on there, but then the NP I think is the real shining star with an 8-hit AoE NP. But let's talk about her skills, because the skills are what pay the bills. Now, looking at skill 1, this is basically the skill that you always want to have active. Like whenever you see this skill comes off cooldown, you just fire this every single time, because she's getting 30% attack for 3 turns, which is rather nice. That's going to multiply into that 20% quick buff that she's giving herself for 3 turns. And if you want to do some buster crits or something along those lines, which does kind of synergize with Ruler Scotty, who we get next year, and she does have 2 buster cards, you also give yourself a 20% buster buff. Now, if you think that that 20% quick buff is going to be a little too small for her to be able to loop, don't worry. She also has a quick buff that she gives herself on her NP. So realistically, she actually has a 40% quick buff, which is why she does do a pretty good, decent bit of damage. You've got a nice sizable attack buff multiplying into a nice sizable quick damage buff. I mean, out of all of the looping sabers, not counting the buster ones, because obviously they don't have to loop, but out of all the looping sabers, she actually does do the most base damage. To kind of put into perspective how good her actually double buffing herself does. But really, there's not a lot to say about the skill, because you just fire it whenever it's available. If you're farming, you just pop this turn 1, because it's just some good stuff that's going to allow her to pretty much function. Moving over to her second skill, this is something that I'm glad that they kind of threw in here, because you get that 30% battery, which we do know that a lot of quick servants actually do need. If you're like me and you use someone like Lancelot, you know that sometimes he can miss out a little bit on, certain NP or something like that. Or if you use Parvati, she can miss out a little bit sometimes, and so having that extra little bit of NP as a little bit of a safeguard can be very nice. But she has a 30% battery, which should cover her when it comes to, looping and refunding, even if she does miss out on, say, like 10% NP because you're farming, I don't know, Berserkers, who give you pretty much next to nothing when it comes to refund. But I mentioned those crits earlier as well, and she has some decent star weight for 1 turn, which I don't know why they relegated it to only 1 turn, because she does have the ability to provide a decent bit of stars, and with a 50% crit damage buff, the same one that Waver gives for 3 turns, she can actually put out some nice crits. Again, if you do want to use her in more difficult content, she can put up some decent results being a crit servant, kind of making up for the fact that AoE NPs don't do as much damage as single target NPs, but the fact that she can back those up with pretty nice crits can kind of allow her to still burst down enemy bosses. But I just don't know why the crit weight was only for 1 turn, right? You think they just give it to her for 3 turns, because it's not even like it's Jalter's like 5,000% star weight or something along those lines. And plus, you probably don't want your Scotties or Ruler Scotties stealing the crits from you anyway. You'd rather her do all the crits, but Overall, it's still fine. It helps her out when it comes to farming because she gets that extra battery, and if you do want to use her in more difficult content, you do have those little bits of crits that you're able to do to make up for the fact that you're not, hitting people with an insane special damage model. You don't have this single target NP that could do a lot of damage. Finally, there's her third skill, and this creates the trifecta of quick farming that I usually talk about when I mention quick servants, is that they have a strong quick buff, they have NP gain, and they have a battery. If they have all three of those, they're probably going to be fine when it comes to farming, but they also went ahead and threw in a 2-hit invincibility that lasts for 3 turns. So again, if you do want to use her in more difficult content, she has some metric of survivability, because Lord knows that Caster Scotty is not going to be keeping your servants alive, right? She's going to be like, here's that 1 hit of evasion. I hope it does you really good, little buddy. Okita also was like, nah, I'm not really going to rely on your 1 hit of evasion that is not easily accessible because it's on your NP, so I'm just going to throw that on my third skill, which is also nice because if you want to use it for farming, you can kind of just pop this whenever you want because you get that 30% NP gain. That's really going to help her out. Overall, you can see why I'm saying that this servant doesn't have any fancy bells or whistles on her. There's no damage mod, there's no, stacking buffs, there's not even like an on-a-hit, attack buff that's like doing special things for her. She just has really, really good skills. She's got solid attack multiplying into a solid quick buff, decent battery, good NP gain, some survivability if you want to use her as a boss killer, some crit potential if you want to use her for that. They even buffed up the buster cards a little bit so those buster crits aren't completely doo-doo water. But I mean, even if we go over to her NP, it has that, quick buff on the overcharge that does proc first. So again, with her first skill up, she realistically has a 40% quick buff, which is really good. And I guess her niche is that she kind of has like the Amakusa effect, where whenever she attacks with her NP, she yeets all of the enemy's defensive buffs off. Now, she doesn't do offensive buffs like, say, Amakusa does all of the buffs, but really removing defensive I find to be the most important, because those are what can kind of stop or hinder you from winning the fight. The enemy pops a dodge when you're on like 2 HP, they extend the turn, and then, they take out your servant or something along those lines. It doesn't allow you to end the fight when you want to. And so being able to remove all of those, I find to be very useful. Again, just a nice little thing they threw in there. They were like, you know what, if you want to use her in more difficult content, you can, because she has these little perks that allow her to do well, but she's not going to excel in them, if that makes sense, because she doesn't have like damage mod or something that's going to make her better as she's going through the fight. But as you can see, yeah, I wasn't lying. Like when it comes to all of the different looping servants, right, your quick and your arts guys, the guys that need to get that overkill and refund, she does the most damage. Now, technically someone like Shiki does beat her out in NP1, but as you can see when it gets to like NP5, she does start to slowly edge it out. And I also don't know if we really count Shiki as a looping saber because of how her own NP works, but you can definitely tell that when they set out to make the servant, they just wanted her to be a very, very strong quick farmer, which is kind of the vibe for the rest of the year. We get a lot of really strong quick 5-star units specifically, because I think they realized that during Lost Belt 6, and especially for the anniversary, that they specifically buffed up Buster way too hard. Like Buster is a little too good, and they even threw in things like Melusine that are really, really strong on the art side of things. So I guess they realized, hey man, we really do need to start putting out some decent quick servants, because it's kind of being left in the dust, which it still kind of is being left in the dust, but it's a little bit easier now that we have people like Okita Alter coming out. And then also, like Izuma, Tai Gong, people like that will also be coming out. But let me know your thoughts on Saber Okita Alter in the comments down below. Unfortunately for me, I see Summer Jean on the horizon. She's supposed to come back for some Apocrypha campaign that we get, so I'm kind of saving all my Sanct Quartz for that. Plus, I don't have Scotty on NA, so I would have this servant and she would go on the shelf next to like Okita. She'd go up there with like Kama, all these quick servants that I really want to use with Scotty to use to their full max potential, and I don't have my own Scotty, so it would just be very depressing to pull her in general. But let me know if you were able to get her. Let me know if this video was a catalyst, and make sure you leave a like on the video and you subscribe to the channel for that sweet daily FGO content. Also, I should be still trying to stream, but I am currently on vacation, so I won't always be able to stream, but I usually do stream every single weekday over on my Twitch starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to still try to do that, although things might change a little bit because time zone differences, but we'll figure that out as we go along. On that note, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.